Hello and welcome to the Fuel, Run, Recover podcast, helping everyday runners fuel better, run smarter, and recover faster so you can reach your full performance potential. I'm your host, Stephanie Natchuk, dietitian, fitness coach, and a fellow runner too. As the owner of Stephanie Natchuk Performance Nutrition, I've spent the last 10 years helping runners learn to fuel their bodies, level up their running performance, and establish healthier relationships with food and exercise. If you're ready to reconnect with your love of running, then let's get started on today's episode. All right, so before we get started with today's episode, I wanted to invite you to check out a few great free resources that I created just for runners. To get them, all you have to do is click on the link in the show notes or visit www.stephanienatchuk.com. If you visit my website, there's a little pop-up box that comes up and it'll prompt you to enter your email address, and these guides will be sent right to your inbox. The first guide is my fueling guide for runners. So, in this resource, you'll find my top fueling tips for runners, as well as some specific meal ideas for both your pre and post run fuel. If you've been struggling to understand what to eat when to support your running and just figuring out what those meal ideas, what those meals look like, what kind of foods you should be including before versus after you run, what the difference is between pre and post run fueling, then this guide is exactly what you need to get you started on the right path. The other guide that I created is my strength training guide for runners. So this guide includes both a PDF resource, has some tips, guidelines, and links to my YouTube series where I actually walk you through all of the exercises in the program. This is a great beginner strength training guide for runners who want an effective but efficient full body workout that helps support the key muscles and movements you need to run stronger and injury-free. So once again, both of these guides are available together. I have them put together as a little bundle for you. You can just click on the link in the show notes or go over to www.stephanienatchuk.com. Enter your email address just the one time, and both of these free guides will get sent to your inbox right away. I hope you enjoy these resources and find them helpful in supporting you and your running. And now let's get into today's episode. All right. So, hello and welcome to today's episode where I am really excited to be sitting down with a former client of mine, Cecil de Guzman, who is a half Ironman finisher, a half Ironman conqueror. And she is here today to tell us all about her experience with figuring out her nutrition strategy, how to approach her nutrition, and how it paid off for her in gearing up for the biggest race that she has done to date. So thank you so much, Cecile, for agreeing to do this episode with me. I'm really excited for you to share your story. And of course, I'm excited to hear it.
Yeah, thank you, Steph. It's an honor and a privilege, to be invited. Yeah, I'm just excited to share my experience and, to refresh also the learnings that I got. Right?
Wonderful. So before we dive into all the questions and all the stories that you're going to share with us today, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into running, how you got into triathlons, and how you decided that you wanted to take on the challenge of a half Ironman.
Yeah. Um, it's funny, it's a funny story how I got into triathlon. I mean, with running, I've been running here and there, but short distances, maybe even 10 years before. Triathlon is a different story because in 2015, I decided that I want to learn how to swim. I can swim, but after one lap, I'll be like a drowning rat at the end of it, drowning and so tired. So I just wanted to learn how to swim properly and to do laps. But I got involved with an organization called Sulong Triathlon. They had an amazing swimming program pre-COVID. So I started training with them. I started learn how to swim with them, but the crowd is so encouraging. The people I was swimming with, they're all doing triathlon. I do bike. I love biking, by the way. I do running, but not swimming. But yeah, might as well. There's short distances for triathlon. I started with try, so the shortest distance. But then again, I never planned it. I never intended to do triathlon. I was just there for the swimming, but again, I was trapped. I was scammed, I'll say, willingly scammed. So yeah, so that was in 2016, and then it just went on from there.
Yeah, and I love that because I feel like there are so few people in endurance sports, whether it's running,
Mm.
whether it's triathlon, cycling, whatever it is, there are so few people who get into endurance sports with the intention of doing like these big, major, crazy long distances. Like all of us are like, oh yeah, like maybe I can like run a few miles, 5K. I'm just here for like to learn to swim as a skill. And the next thing you know, it's like, when's your next marathon? And you sort of get like, you just get sucked into it, into these longer and longer things. And I'll sometimes just very jokingly say, especially like the ultra running community. I mean, so much love to the ultra running community, but I mean, you guys are a cult. Like,
Yeah.
it's never far enough, it's never long enough. There's always more that you can do. And I think it's an amazing, wonderful community, all of these different sports. But it's incredible how you go from being someone who never thought, that you would be a triathlete to now, planning for not just one half Ironman, but you're looking forward to doing more.
Well, absolutely. I was planning to do another half this year, but I was telling you earlier that it got canceled. I got all my plans though. I did all my assignments. But yeah, but it got because I was leaning forward. I mean, if you'll do half, might as well do a full. It will not be complete.
Exactly,
But
exactly.
yeah, that's one of the goals in the coming years to complete a full Ironman.
I love it. I love it. So, out of all the races that you've done to date, I mean, between your running races and your triathlons and kind of everything you've done, tell us a little bit more about some of the races you've done. In particular, which was your favorite race and why was it your favorite?
Because that's the farthest distance that I did. It's the longest distance that I did so far, and I finished it. I finished it not with the time that I was intending to, but I finished it strong. Not the strongest, but I finished it not feeling bonk, not feeling too tired. I still had energy after the race to socialize, to be with family and friends, to share the experiences. I'm not sure if that's the adrenaline rush, but after a few days that I finish it and the structure that it gives me. If you have something that you look forward to, or if you have a goal that you're intending to hit, then your actions towards reaching it would be structured and you'll be more disciplined in the process. And I like that. I like to plan. I guess that's part of my personality, hey? To know where I'm going and to know, hey, am I doing things right? And doing sports, makes me not only directed and disciplined, but it humbles me. When I have undertakings, when I do things, I always for the success, but it humbles me. It grounds me. Sports ground me. It gives me an assessment of where I am, not only in fitness, but with the things that I do. So I like how it balances me, and I like how it gives structure in my everyday.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's always so nice, if we want to stay just as a general lifestyle goal, like it's good to be active and it's good to move your body and it's good to fuel yourself in a nutritious way. But I find that there's sort of this next level of having a goal that we're working towards that really is so motivating to continue with even the fairly basic lifestyle practices of, healthy diet and exercise. Having something beyond that we're striving for, like you said, it,
Mhm.
it definitely humbles you, but I think it also gives us a ton of empowerment and a ton of motivation.
Yeah, I mean, fitness will always be, what you do with your life. I mean, in terms of, being healthy and all. But yeah, there's many facets. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
love that. I love that. And so with the racing, so you started swimming in 2015, you started getting more into racing in 2016, and at what point along that journey did you decide that you really needed some help and wanted to work with someone specifically on your nutrition? So you've obviously had coaches on the training side of things, and you've been working with people to help you get ready for these events because training
Mhm.
for a triathlon is not something that most people can undertake solo.
Mhm.
When did you start to think that maybe there was a gap in your nutrition and you wanted to work with someone on filling that gap?
So I reached out to you early last year, right? I reached out to you to talk to you about nutrition. But even before that, I was thinking, and everybody is saying that triathlon's fourth event is the nutrition. It's not just all about training, this and that. The biggest part of it is also nutrition, and not just only triathlon, right, but even other sports. So I've tried doing things from what I've learned. I
Hmm.
tried doing things from what other people say that works for them, but then I got to a point that, hey, what they're saying that works for them is not working out for me. I don't feel what they are saying that they're feeling after doing certain things. So, and then I don't know how I came across your Instagram. I don't know, maybe it's just one of the scrolling moments adds a lot of icing on the cake. So definitely there was an intention at the very first, but if I'm putting time, effort, and other resources with what I'm doing, I have to make sure that I have someone, to assist me and to give me a lot of enlightenment with my nutrition. I want to say, the stars are aligning, but I know Facebook and social media and Instagram has their algorithm to know what you're what you're researching. So, but anyway, but I came across your social media page, and I've decided right then and there that, yeah, I mean, I need to reach out. If I'm doing all the effort and I'm spending all my resources on this, I have to make it more on point.
Half Ironman, feeling strong, having gas left in the tank, feeling like even a few days later you weren't totally exhausted. Like, feeling like you got the best experience because you were really dialed into the nutrition aspect of that whole thing. And you also mentioned that, the fourth event is your nutrition, and that's exactly right. Another thing that we'll often say in the endurance sports world is that triathlons are just eating and drinking contests. Whoever can fuel and hydrate is the person that's going to cross the finish line, because it's such an important aspect of not only fueling and getting results from the training, like all the miles and volume of training that you put in, but then also, of course, on race day, being able to put what you've practiced, into reality.
Mhm. Yeah, it's also important that you practice it, like that you train your gut. That you practice with your nutrition that you'll do on the race day. You don't you. I mean, the worst thing that could happen in a race day is that you'll try something new and that you'll have GI issues, or something doesn't work. So yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And, for yourself, you were very smart to be starting that process months and months before your event. So, we worked together early in 2022. Your race was in summer of 2022, and you had
Mhm.
plenty of time to take the lessons you learned, to implement them, to figure out what was going to work well, and really really bring it all together. So, it's also not only making that smart investment in putting all these pieces together, but also giving yourself enough time for all of it to actually come together, rather than, oh no, I have a race in 2 weeks. Better find someone to help me with my nutrition. There's only so much we can do on that kind of time frame.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as much as we can, we try to avoid surprises, right?
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more specifically. I'd love to hear more about what were some of the biggest or most impactful lessons that you learned during your nutrition education. So, when we were going through your plan, when we were creating that nutrition plan, like what were some of the things that really surprised you or made a big difference?
The difference between like what you can eat prior to the training load that you'll have the next day. I thought maybe that might be a common sense for some, but it wasn't for me. That
Mhm.
you had. I remember like you gave me the different kinds of plate. That's ideally you should be consuming before or a day before your training. So if you're having a long day or a more strenuous workout, then you'll have more carbs and proteins. The different macros, if I'll say, of based on what you're fueling into, right? Like acting on the intention that you'll be doing the next day. But the biggest surprise for me was the amount of calories, that you have to consume in a race day
Yeah,
per
yeah,
hour.
yeah.
I remember when you said, "Oh, you have to take two of like because I used to take just one goo gel, in an hour, and then I was just flabbergasted when I have to take two,
Yes.
So so that made me, oh, no wonder.
Yeah, for sure. And you said that that it might not be a surprise for other people, but it certainly was for you. And I would say that you're probably very, very wrong about that. I think the idea that we need to fuel up sort of in advance of our training and we want to go into our training well fueled isn't something that's sort of common sense or something that's relatively well known about sport nutrition. And you're definitely not the only person whose jaw literally hits the floor when you find out, kind of what those fueling recommendations are of, trying to get in those 60 plus grams of carbs per hour. So,
Mm-hmm.
the lessons that you needed to learn as a new triathlete are
Mm-hmm.
things that so I mean the vast majority of endurance runners also need to learn, and I think that that's where the value of spending some time on your nutrition, learning some of these things, especially in a personalized way, is so important.
Yeah. And also, if I may add, the holy trinity of nutrition: electrolytes, fluid, and carbohydrate.
Yep,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. Absolutely. And so tell us, when it came to your nutrition strategy, like what you did during your half Ironman, what did you do? So you said that you went from one gel to two gels. What did you end up bringing along with you for hydration and for electrolytes? Like what did your race day plan look like that you practiced during training?
So I definitely had the gels, the
Yep.
Roctanes, and then I had BCAA. So yeah, that's one more thing. I didn't know that such a thing. I know that I see it in the stores, but I didn't know what it is for, and how it's important for muscle recovery and for taking in all the nutrients that you need, right? But my nutrition race plan was to periodize, to make sure that whatever I'm feeling, even if I'm not feeling hungry, if I'm not feeling tired, and that's the best time to eat or to consume calories and electrolytes and fluid is when you're not hungry, because if you're feeling it, then that's too late, right? And
Yes. Yeah.
it would take more time for you to recover, and by the time that you'll know it, you're already crashing into your race. So
Yeah.
yes, the electrolytes and the carbohydrates in I think I had 2 bottles for the 90-kilometer ride, or no, actually three, because I had fluid, I had just water. But
Mhm.
I did not bring so much water because I know that the aid station, I can refill from the aid station, but I had lots of gel. And I also had, those ginger, just to clean the palate, to give
Yeah.
me a refreshing flavor. So I had
Yep.
that. That
Mhm.
helped me, not only to clean my palate, but also kind of refreshed my mind, to give me like a restart. So yes,
Mhm.
the race plan was essentially to consume 250 to 350 calories, and I divided that into my carbs, with my carbs and my electrolytes, and the fluid, and with my gels.
Yeah, yeah, that's wonderful. And so basically, there's a couple really important things that you said there that I'd love for people listening to sort of take note of. The first is that you were really ticking off those boxes of your fluids, your fuel, and your electrolytes. You had multiple ways that you were getting those three things in. So between the gels and then your electrolyte hydration mix that you had in your bottle, and then also some plain water as well for when you needed a little bit of like a palate refresh. You had kind of
Mhm,
different things that you could choose from. And, something that I think really just comes with race experience is when you're doing these longer distances, the taste fatigue that we can get is very real. And
mhm,
if you're going to be using the same nutrition, right? You want to practice with things and you want to kind of have a plan that works for you. But if it means that we're using the same gels, the same hydration mix, especially the same flavors and stuff like that on these hours and hours and hours that we spend training and racing, we can start to get really tired of the same stuff, right? The same flavors of
mhm,
stuff. And so having something in the mix, like you mentioned, using ginger, just as a little bit of like a palate cleanser, just to sort of refresh your taste and sort of give you something a bit different to break it up. That's
mhm,
wonderful because when we are fueling with the same stuff all the time, we start to get tired of it. Then we're going to
mhm,
fall off of our nutrition schedule. We're not going to be able to maintain getting in those gels and the sips of fluid and hydration because it might start to turn our stomach, or we just might start to get totally turned off by the flavor. So all of those are really great strategies for these types of endurance events that are just hours and hours and hours of fueling to make sure that you're not by the end really, falling off of that plan that you've set out for yourself.
mhm. Yeah, aside from the gel, I also had gummy bears, to just to have a
Yep.
different texture.
Yes. Yes.
right? Yeah, so that added because you're playing with your mind when you're doing it,
100%.
right? So yeah, so that helped. That gave a different, a variation with your palate, with your taste, with your mind too.
Yes, yes, totally. Having different options is fantastic. So with all of that, I mean, you had your plan, you practiced for months, you knew what you were going to be doing going into that race. You already touched on this a little bit when you were talking about the race as a whole, but what result were you most excited about when it came to the difference you saw with your nutrition? So what were some of the outcomes that you were really excited to see?
I with the races that I had done, what I was excited about is maintaining the energy level,
Yeah.
throughout the race. If you're running 2 hours, if you're running 3 hours, right? Maintaining the energy level and not feeling tired, and that that you're feeling that you can still go on. Pacing would be differently, would be different in maybe time, distances, right? But nonetheless, if you're still feeling that yes, I can still keep up, you're not feeling exhausted, you're not hitting bonk, that's the reward. And that's because you cannot run 180 kilometers per hour if you're low on gas, if you don't have gas, right? And again, I'm
Yep.
not running 180 hours, just a car. I mean, just a metaphor. But yeah, excited with sustaining the energy level. Can only be achieved if you have proper nutrition.
Yes. Yeah. 100%. And so outside of just the race, because obviously, you've talked already about some of the things that you've done differently, specifically with the nutrition during your training, during your races. But to zoom out a little bit, what was maybe something surprising that you've started doing differently in other areas of your nutrition, kind of just as a whole, after learning a little bit more about this proper fueling plan for being an endurance athlete?
Carbs. You know, as a Filipino person, we're heavily, even a feast. If a feast doesn't have rice, it's just a snack. You know,
Which
like
is
a
great
meal.
if you're a triathlete, right?
Yes. But growing up and even with the fad diets, they're saying that, yeah, carbohydrates is the culprit. Carbohydrates, you should not be taking carbohydrates at all. I mean, other thoughts are even saying that, yeah, low carbs or zero carbs is the key to have an optimum performance. But, so I had love and hate relationship with rice. I'll take it or I'll cut it off
Yeah.
completely. But with the session that we had, I appreciated it more, and I'm no longer trying to eliminate it, like to cut it off, totally cut it off, to make sure that I'm taking it at the right time because it's still the preferred source of energy of the body, and not only the body but also the mind. I mean, we know that the brain cells are being fed by carbohydrates, right? So I mean, it gives us clarity in mind, not just we feel good. That's why we feel good. So I developed a different level of relationship with my rice consumption, with my carbohydrates in general. And yeah, and so I've started doing it like before. The mentality is less carb, less carb, less carb, no rice, and that doesn't make me happy. That did not make me happy. But then again, the thought that, I learned from the session that we had is best thing about it is that, yeah, you can still have it, but be wise when you're consuming it.
Absolutely. And it's all about that balance, right? I mean, yes, you definitely need to fuel with your carbs, but our bodies don't only need carbs for fuel. We also
Mm-hmm.
need protein for muscle recovery and fiber and
Mm-hmm.
vitamins and minerals from our fruits and vegetables. And, if we're too much in one area, we're going to have to be cutting back on something else and then we get those nutrient imbalances. And, like you mentioned before, the athlete's plates, using those as kind of a guide of how much of these different things you need day to day is a
Mm-hmm.
way that we can still eat all the foods we love, especially all the foods that are so important to us just as a culture. And
Mm-hmm.
then we're also not feeling like we're deprived or sacrificing or low energy. We can get everything we want and need just in the right proportions based on our training demands.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so if somebody's listening to this conversation today and is kind of where you were at a few years ago
Mm-hmm.
of maybe having some big goals, signing up for bigger races, starting to feel a little bit confused about some like conflicting information you're getting, people are giving you different opinions about nutrition, but you're trying some things that don't really seem to be working and you're just feeling a little bit confused. if someone's in the position that you were in a couple years ago, what advice would you have for those runners? What would you tell them to do?
Definitely work with you. I mean, do I'm not trying to promote you, but I'm promoting you. I'm promoting, don't neglect the nutrition piece. Because before, I think that I thought that that doing the mileage, putting in the mileage, doing this and that is enough. But the
Yeah.
biggest chunk of it happens with what's happening in your bloodstream, with what's happening in your muscle recovery, your repair. And you'll get that with stretching, but the biggest part of it is coming from the nutrition. So in all seriousness, don't neglect nutrition. And again, talk to someone, consult someone who's knowledgeable and can give you sound advice that will work for you. Because not everything that we hear or we read from social media, from even from the books, we hear from stories, we hear from people we look up to fitness wise might not work with us, so who can give us sound advice with our needs, and and even cultural values, someone who can personalize, who can understand us and who are in the same page. One thing I like with our session, with the learnings that I got from you, is that you understand, because you're also a runner. So you know how important it is. You also run, running is a big part for you. So you understand how nutrition is important, with the athletic goals that we set. Take nutrition, give premium with nutrition. Consult someone so that they can help you with the nutrition gaps, you know.
Yeah. Wonderful, wonderful advice, right? I mean, getting that return on investment, getting advice that's personalized, getting help
Mhm.
from someone who understands what your needs are and sort of listens to your goals and is able to really help you kind of make everything in alignment with what you're trying to achieve. So,
Mhm.
thank you so much for that. And is there anything else that you want to share before we sign off today?
But I want to share maybe so that nutrition is really important. It's like choosing the best fuel that will work for you, and we should put premium to it. Yeah.
Yes, I love that. I love that. So, where can people find you, follow you on Instagram if they want to connect with other triathletes and just follow along and cheer you on your journey?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram. I'm Cecil DG on Instagram. I'm definitely not the fastest, the strongest, but I don't quit. But I keep on going, and it's my own self against my own self.
Yeah, and I mean anybody who is doing what you do and signing up for these events and going through the process of preparing their minds, preparing their bodies, planning, training, getting to that race and finishing it, right? I mean, that's a huge accomplishment, right? Whether you come in first or you come in last, everybody covered the
Absolutely.
same distance that day and we should be so proud of that accomplishment. And of course,
Mm-hmm.
I am so proud of you and I am honored to have been part of your half Ironman journey and hopefully future half Ironman journeys. You'll continue to make use of all the nutrition lessons that you learned along the way. So, thank you so much once again for agreeing to come and record this episode with me. I really, really appreciate your time today. And for everyone listening, thank you so much for tuning in. And we will see you in the next episode. The information on this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not to be used or relied upon for the diagnosis or treatment of any health condition. This information does not create a client practitioner relationship and should not be used as a substitute for professional medical advice.